Iran and the US have ended a third round of indirect talks in Switzerland over Iran's nuclear program. Further discussions are now expected next week after what mediators described as significant progress. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the sides reached a close understanding, but that differences remain. He said Iran had clearly expressed its wish for US sanctions to be lifted. Washington has always insisted this will only happen if Tehran makes big concessions on its nuclear program. President Trump has repeatedly threatened military action if there's no deal and has massed forces in the region. Our chief international correspondent Lise Doucette is in Geneva and gave us her analysis of the talks so far.
We've only had a partial assessment of what happened here in Geneva yesterday. As you mentioned, the Foreign Minister of Oman, who's the main mediator, did use the phrase significant progress. And we've seen in the last few rounds of talks how Iran very quickly tries to shape the narrative. And what we heard last night from the Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, who's Iran's top negotiator, he said these had been the most serious and the longest ever talks that he's had with the United States. There was about 4 hours in the morning, about 2 hours in the afternoon. It was significant that Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, was involved in the discussion. That means, Nomia, that the discussions were very technical, as they have to be when you're discussing nuclear issues. But we haven't heard from the American side yet. We understand that, of course, President Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, they were also involved in Ukrainian talks here in Geneva. We hear that they will first brief President Trump, and perhaps President Trump will be the first to say whether he believes not just that whether or not there was progress, but enough progress to avert that threat of military action that he has so often warned Iran about.
Lise Doucette there in Geneva. As the world watches to see if the US and Iran can avoid war, the BBC's Verify's Merlin Thomas looks at America's military buildup in the Middle East.
Over the past few weeks, the Middle East has seen the largest buildup of US military in the region since the Iraq War. We've been using satellite analysis alongside flight and ship tracking data to get a glimpse of what President Trump described as a massive armada. Joining the US fleet already in the Middle East is the largest warship in the world, the USS Gerald R. Ford. It left Crete, Greece on Thursday, carrying with it thousands of crew members, a flotilla of destroyers and dozens of fighter jets. And it's part of a wide range of US assets in the region. Using satellite imagery, flight tracking data and verified videos, we've been mapping the buildup. These are US naval assets, including 2 aircraft carriers and their destroyers, as well as some military aircraft. Remember, this isn't a complete picture, and these are approximate locations because they're likely to be on the move. There's also US bases in the region. Now, this second aircraft carrier in the region, the USS Abraham Lincoln, can be seen in the latest satellite imagery on Wednesday off the coast of Oman. Now, when we zoom out, you can see the fleet of 7 vessels. Experts have said there are more than enough military assets in the region to indicate the US might be planning for a prolonged operation. One expert said the main questions now are about who will strike first, the cost of the operation in terms of munition stockpiles, and force readiness for further conflicts. Meanwhile, Iran has said it won't initiate war, but that it will respond to any US aggression decisively and proportionately.
Thanks to Merlin Thomas there from BBC Verify.